Good evening and welcome to the June 3rd Historic Preservation Commission meeting. We're going to call the meeting to order. Christy, can you do the roll, please?
Yes. Scott Allen.
Here.
George Piper.
Here.
Casey Sampson.
Present.
Scott Sewell.
Present.
Nicole Weddington. Here.
All right, have a full board tonight. First thing, we'll do approval of the minutes. Everyone had a chance to view the minutes that was here last time?
Motion to approve?
A motion, and I'll second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Seeing no old business, we'll move right to new business, which is a certificate of appropriateness with the City of Lebanon. And I think we'll hear from staff first. Derek?
Sorry, we started before I was ready and we're having some technical difficulties as well. So give me 1 second. Sorry. I now have to log in and verify that I am Derek Warren trying to log into my device because the IT department has us do that every 30 days to make sure that the Taliban is not trying to infiltrate the City of Lebanon public information folders.
I'll second that you're Derek Warren.
Okay. If you can,
It looks different from last time.
if you can produce the 6-digit code that gets sent to my phone, that would be very helpful.
You can just table and come back next month.
Well, I kind of have this memorized. I suppose I could just do it off of memory, but let me see something here. Sorry. I'll get there. There's always a back door. Don't tell the IT department that. Okay, I am in. I think. Okay, so first on the agenda, I believe, is the trailhead at 115 South Meridian
Yes.
Street? All right. Okay, so tonight, first on the agenda, 115 South Meridian Street is the address, and the applicant is the City of Lebanon. Kevin Krulik will be presenting the city side of the application. To be honest with you, we've kind of talked about this together as an office and as a city, but Kevin has been willing to come in and answer any questions on the technical side of the application. This site has not been before the Historic Preservation Commission prior to tonight. This is the parking lot that we recently purchased off of Tribbett Rich Insurance that was north of the Montgomery Ward site that was demolished, gosh, what was that, 6, 7, 8 months ago. The site does not have a rating because it has been a parking lot since its conception, since the conception of the Lebanon Historic District, and parking lots are not rated. So tonight, the certificate of appropriateness application is for fencing, a bike rack, bench, and signage. So the idea here is to create a public space that can be used as a somewhat of a trailhead for the Big Four Trail. That's obviously right across the street, which we are extending from Main and Meridian Street all the way to Abner Longley, and again, eventually expansion of the Big Four Trail all the way up to Thorntown, completely paved. So to have somewhere along the trail for somebody to stop, take a break on the bench, you can tie their bike up, go to the restroom, enjoy downtown, enjoy the square, whatever the case may be. This amenity accomplishes that. It also accomplishes the idea of a public facility for all the events that are starting to happen downtown. There is no place for anyone to use a restroom in a public setting right now, and those events are starting to certainly ramp up, and attendance is starting to ramp up. So to give people a place to do their business is starting to present itself as a need. So not knowing exactly what the long-term outlook for this site is, whether it's redevelopment, whatever the options become. But we don't want to do something permanent necessarily, because a permanent facility such as this can easily get into the six-figure range. Some of the park restroom facilities cost $100,000 every time we build one. So it's just the nature of construction these days. So we're piecing together an idea that hopefully is respectful to the district and gives a sense of somewhat permanent and without giving the idea that it's actually temporary. So most of the amenities that complement this idea are the exact same amenity that we've used in the downtown renovation. So the bike racks are the exact same. The signage is the exact same. Gosh, what else are we using? Bike rack same, signage the same, trash can and benches exactly the same that the city has installed around the courthouse square. So the fencing that is being proposed, there's actually a kind of a late submittal on a secondary fence. Both of the submittals are black aluminum to complement the black aluminum fencing that we've installed around the square. I'm really sorry about my technical difficulties here. Usually this is at a touch of a finger. Okay, so the space is 12 by 12 with a 96-inch enclosure to conceal what we will use as the portalets that you see downtown, the yellow portalets that pop up from time to time. So two of them will be placed in this enclosure, the 12 by 12 enclosure, 96 inches tall. Both submittals are black aluminum for the fencing. One is a solid panel, more or less, ribbed application, and one is a shadow box. But if you look at the folder that's provided to you tonight in the amenity package, and you look at the Cambridge shadow box, that is the alternative. It's really a pretty solid shadow box. There are gaps in there, but you have to be at the exact right angle to see through that thing. So the cut sheet shows it as a pretty solid application, and the pictures that go along with it give a pretty good representation of what that would look like. The idea is the solid application somewhat represents or looks like pole barn siding. I think black is kind of mutes that a little bit. Doesn't make it quite look like pole barn siding, but the shadow box makes it look a little bit more like a decorative fence. So those are the two points of discussion tonight. So with that, maybe. The staff recommendation is we believe, given the quality of materials being used for this application, there will not be an adverse effect to the district. This amenity will offer a nice public restroom option for visitors to our historic square. In the event this property is redeveloped, this amenity will be relocated. So it's, again, not meant to be permanent at this time. This installation is not intended to obstruct the redevelopment goal of having a structure built on this site. So that's why, again, it's temporary in nature. So staff does recommend approval of the COA application. Sorry for the glitches, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Derek. Any questions for Derek? Seeing none, ask the applicant to come forward and give any other further explanation.
Thank you. I don't think I will try to connect, given the difficulties, but Derek Mr. Warren has summed it up very well. I don't think I have a whole lot to add. I guess maybe just a little bit more about maybe our future intentions. The site, the old Montgomery Ward site and this parking lot site are now owned by the City of Lebanon by and through their redevelopment commission. At some point that could be redeveloped. It's not as if we are actively marketing that piece of property, but as we get developers that inevitably come to town looking for places to do projects in and near the downtown, this is a site we may show them. It would be our intention long-term, if there is ever a building put on this site, that we would like to see a public restroom, in sort of a ground floor location of that building that could replace this. But in the meantime, we thought this, provided some opportunity to create a temporary trailhead location. We don't have a trailhead in the city of Lebanon that has restroom capabilities. And then obviously there is the need for restrooms available for the various downtown events. We're doing as best we can to try to match the materials that we used around the courthouse square. Obviously, we don't have any solid panel fencing on the square, but this is from a similar manufacturer, actually installed by the same subcontractor that installed all the fencing downtown. We will also be installing the same bench that is installed around the square, the same trash can that is installed around the square, the same bike rack that is installed around the square, and branding the enclosure with a 30-inch round Big 4 Trail logo sign on the side of it as well, to break up the monotonous nature of the fence panels. Again, black metal. This is really a commercial architectural panel fence is what this is. 96 inch tall. That's more than the height of a portalette, so we feel as though this would completely screen a portalette from view. And it will have gates that will be lockable, that could be pinned open for events or for all time, but at some point if we needed to close it and lock it, they could be done as well. And I think that's all we're really here to talk about tonight is an opportunity to create a temporary trailhead location in the middle of our community, in the heart of Lebanon, and create some opportunity for trail users and for downtown users to have that feature. There is a question of, right now, these rib panels that are about 5 inches, so that if you think about your standard fence has wooden slats, these are metal slats. They are about 5 inches wide, and they have a relief to them that's about 1.25 inches. So they sort of step out 1.25 inches. So the question is, do we alternate those inside and outside of the rails that hold the fencing to create a shadow box appearance? Straight on view, you're not going to see through it, but at the right angle, you will see, I don't think you'd see a portalette, but you'll see the yellow color behind there of the portalette, or whatever portalette color may be. But the other option is to take those panels, put them on the same side of the rails, and butt them up against each other, which is completely opaque at that point. But as we got to looking at it, I was reminded that kind of looks like a pole barn. Is that really the decorative aesthetic that we want for downtown, or should we go with something a little more aesthetic? So we did reach out to the manufacturer literally at the 11th hour, literally last night, to see if they had a more decorative option, and they said, well, we could shadow box the same material. So that's up for discussion. I can see it both ways. No one likes to look at portalettes, but maybe more undulation in the building plane, if you will, of the enclosure would be more aesthetically pleasing. It also provides a little more ventilation, which is worth thinking about when we're talking about portalettes. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have and take any feedback you have on the solid panel versus shadow box style fence panels.
From a price point, Kevin, is there any difference between the two?
It's about $500. So, yeah, I mean, it's when I found out it was only $500, it's well worth asking the commission and having the conversation to see what we would all like to see.
Couple quick questions. Has there been any discussion of possibly providing a water fountain at this site?
Yeah, you know, that's something we've talked about is water fountains, hand washing stations. It's not a real easy application to install a water lateral there, and because we're at a temporary nature, we weren't going to make the make the effort, if you will, bear the expense is probably a more appropriate way to put it, to install a water lateral to cut into the sidewalk, cut into the street, to run the water lateral to the site. So we weren't planning to make anything permanent. We have talked about, you know, portalet companies have hand washing stations, about possibly putting something like that there. But in terms of drinking water or water for hand washing, we were not planning to. Again, trying to make it temporary. You know, Derek mentioned the cost of permanent, you know, full utility hookup restroom facilities. The restroom facility that just opened last year in the park had a $327,000 price tag to it. So obviously, we want something that is temporary. We want something that quickly and easily be taken down if there is a redevelopment opportunity. And we're really only losing one parking space, so we're able to create a 42-space parking lot on that site. We think that will help alleviate some of the parking concerns that we've heard from residents with the square.
And then, this may be a no-brainer, but will there be some sort of signage denoting this as a public restroom, so people aren't?
We weren't planning to sign it restroom. We're happy to. We were just planning to brand it with the Big Four logo.
I'm just thinking people might be wondering, is this a construction restroom, or,
Yeah.
can I use this?
It's not a bad idea to put some sort of public restroom designation if that would appease the commission. We're happy to work with staff to put together a sign package that would clearly brand it as a public restroom.
I think to echo Mr. Allen, that would be my first thought, was some type of signage, because when I first look at this, it reminds me of the enclosures that you would see for dumpsters.
Yeah.
And
somewhat.
so, you know, at first glance, it's an empty parking lot, and there's just a square facility. I don't know if I would recognize it as a restroom.
Yeah.
Secondly, any thoughts on security? I know there's been an issue in the past with vandalism for the portalets that are temporary, and that's a concern. There's not much there besides a parking lot, but I noticed it does have a gate, so what's the security efforts on that?
Good question. It's in a highly visible area. So was the last portalet that was vandalized. We weren't planning to make any investments in any kind of additional security there. We are, as a city, frequently adding in security cameras and park areas and trail areas. So that's something we could work with. A lot of that comes through our police department, is how a lot of those security cameras are funded. So we could look at putting one of those on the utility pole that's right next to this to look down into that area. Obviously, we want to be sensitive. It is a restroom area, but that could be something to help with security. Obviously, added patrols from the police department. This is a block away from the police department, so but that's all we were really planning to do, and then have it lockable, that it could be locked if we feel as though it's a continual issue with vandalism.
So would that gate be open at all times then? And
That would be my intention as a
Okay.
trailhead, that it would always be there for people using the trail to stop and use the facilities. But if at some point we needed to change that policy due to vandalism and only unlock it during events and lock it back up, that's a possibility. But again, the intention, first and foremost, was trailhead. Second was the event amenity as well.
okay.
Kind of piggybacking off of Casey's question, is this a fairly well-lit area
Yes.
at night? Okay.
Yeah, there is there's a utility pole within 15 feet of this that has a security light on it. So, yeah, it would be pretty well lit at night. Also, probably why I like the shadow box idea too. It provides a little more visibility. You can see if somebody is in there, something is in there.
And then the last relative security type question I had is that if it's going to be open, can it be then shut, or can it be locked open? That way you can't get, people that will lock that door behind them
Yeah,
to
I
create
think
an issue.
the hardware would have one of those, I would call it a ground pin that
Sure.
goes into the ground, and typically there's an opportunity to put a padlock through that to lock it down as well as lock it up. So that would
Okay.
be how it would be installed and how it could be secured open.
Any other questions for the applicant at this time? Any discussion points on the shadow box or the straight on? Any opinions one way or the other? I personally like the shadow box. I think it breaks that line up and adds a little bit of dimension. Does help with security, I think, too, just a little bit, showing that you can see inside of it and it's not a complete enclosure. And temporary, I know it's not on a temporary basis, but I know it's hard to say because there's no plan, but how temporary is temporary? Is this temporarily permanent, essentially, until?
Well, I mean, we're building with architectural, commercial grade material. This is all metal posts set in concrete in the ground. This is high strength, 80,000 PSI fence panel. This is a commercial application. So could it be there in perpetuity? Absolutely. When I say temporary, we're just willing to take this down if and when there's another redevelopment opportunity that the city would like to realize at this location.
Okay. I guess my only question in regards to a motion, and maybe this is a question maybe for Derek, is it how we make this motion on a temporary basis? I know in the past, temporary COAs have had a time limit, where this may not necessarily have a time limit.
Yeah, I think in this case, I would hate to put a time limit on it. I think Kevin hit the nail on the head with the temporary part of it being it can go away without a tremendous investment when the redevelopment opportunity does present itself. But can also be there for 5 years if it needs to be 6, 7 years, whatever it is, whatever the climate for redevelopment is. So personally, as staff, I would think a COA to approve the construction of the facility as presented tonight without a time limit on it would make sense to me.
Any other questions for the applicant? And now I'll entertain a motion. Well, I will make a motion. We approve the COA as submitted.
Second?
Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you. One point of clarification.
Yes, sir.
As submitted was the solid fence panel, but it seemed like there was consensus to do the shadow box.
Fair enough. I think the shadow box would, I don't know if we need to amend that motion, Christie,
Yeah.
but we'll amend that motion to a shadow box if that's okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, next up on the agenda is now I'm having technical difficulties. Thank you. It's a certificate of appropriateness for 125 South Meridian Street, an amendment to a previously approved COA.
Good news, I was able to verify that I am Derek Warren. So, I'm in. Okay, so, in front of you for the second item on the agenda is Patrick Clues with Clues Brews. As described, he is seeking an amendment to the certificate of appropriateness that was given on March 2nd of 2021. In a nutshell, the applicant would like to keep the outdoor seating structure, components of that structure in a raw cedar state instead of wrapping it in black aluminum. So the original proposal was to wrap the entire structure in black aluminum. In this case, the amendment he is seeking is to remain a black standing seam metal roof black fascia, black soffit, but to leave the post and the railings that surround that structure in a natural cedar state. And it is it's not a, smooth cedar. It is more or less a rough sawn cedar, for the best way to describe it. In the description that the applicant has provided here tonight, he was able to acquire that grade of lumber at a really reasonable price, not thinking that he was going to be able to do that when we presented in March. If you've watched lumber prices at all, they are absolutely ridiculous right now. What used to cost $2 is now, $12, $16, $18, depending on what day it is. So for him to be able to secure this was just something he didn't foresee back in March. So that's the amendment, to not wrap the post and the handrails, if you want to call it that, of the railing in black aluminum. So in the staff recommendation, I believe that had the applicant proposed cedar in the March 2021 application, the material would have been supported. Cedar is a supported material in our district, so natural wood is something that is encouraged. We've had plenty of applications that are a faux wood that have been approved, but a natural wood fits right into the guidelines of something that would be approved. The applicant has proposed sealing the cedar so that it does retain its natural tone and does not turn gray by the sunlight. We've talked about different applications for that. There are water-based clear coats out there that will help provide protection, but it has to be applied pretty frequently. If you do a little research on how to retain that natural cedar look, linseed oil is by far the Cadillac of it all. So it is a oil-based sealer and does help the cedar, retain that natural look much longer than the water-based sealer. So that is the recommendation, that the applicant uses linseed oil, being very careful because it will spontaneously combust if you don't treat the rags the proper way. So I relayed that to the applicant, so hopefully he's aware of that, so we don't end up with a 5-gallon bucket fire out there. But with that, staff recommends approval of the amendment to the certification of appropriateness.
Okay, any questions for Derek? Is there any other further points from the applicant, or are you comfortable with that explanation? Okay. I actually met with the applicant a few days ago and had spoke to him about this, and I'm looking at the structure they built. It looks amazing, and I feel like, personally, I feel like adding that aluminum would take away from it at this point. So any discussion on the point? Seeing none, I will make a motion to approve the certificate, or the amendment to the certificate of appropriateness.
Second?
Lots of seconds. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. All right, thank you, sir. Thank you. All right, seeing no other business before, is there anything else the commission has to bring before the board? Okay, and with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor, say aye.
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 We will see you next month. Thank you.